When God removes someone from your life, it's not just a breakup, a fallout, or a disappointment. It's divine intervention, a holy extraction meant to preserve your purpose. And the faster you stop mourning the departure, the quicker you'll step into the clarity that comes after the pruning. Some people weren't sent to stay. They were assignments with expiration dates, and you've been crying over what God has already canceled because you confused attachment with alignment. You begged God to show you what's holding you back, and He answered by removing the very people you thought you couldn't live without, because He saw what you didn't. The jealousy behind the smile, the compromise behind the companionship, the spiritual decay behind the connection. He heard the conversations that never reached your ears, saw the motives they never revealed, and acted out of mercy, not punishment. Proverbs 4:23 warns us to guard our hearts. And sometimes the most dangerous threats to your calling aren't enemies. They're the familiar voices sitting closest to you. That's why Samson's downfall came from Delilah, not a Philistine soldier. That's why Jesus told Peter, "Get behind me, Satan." Not because Peter was evil, but because even those who love you can become obstacles to your obedience when they don't understand your assignment. And when God starts cutting, it hurts, because the soul doesn't separate easily. You replay memories, question your worth, and wonder what you did wrong. But sometimes the only thing you did wrong was outgrow who they were content being. You evolved spiritually, emotionally, or mentally, and they refused to come with you. So God did what you were too loyal to do. He closed the door. And don't be shocked when He does it suddenly. God doesn't always give warnings before He severs ties, because if He did, your compassion would interfere with His correction. Remember Lot's wife? She looked back and turned to salt. That wasn't just a story about disobedience. It was a warning about the cost of clinging to places and people God is calling you to leave behind. God is not interested in your comfort if it means compromising your calling. You've been praying for growth, for clarity, for elevation. But what if I told you that removal is the first stage of release? Before David sat on the throne, Saul had to exit. Before Israel entered the promised land, the generation that doubted had to die off. You're asking God for next-level blessings, but you're still holding on to first-level relationships, and that's not how the kingdom works. Amos 3:3 asks, "Can two walk together unless they be agreed?" And the answer is no, not when the road ahead demands purity, purpose, and prophetic vision. Some people were weights, not wings. They applauded your old season, but secretly resented your growth. They were fine with you as long as you stayed small, stayed silent, stayed manageable. But the moment you started to awaken, to move, to obey, the atmosphere shifted. That resistance you felt wasn't accidental. It was spiritual tension, a divine alarm letting you know the agreement had expired. And now here's the shocking part. Sometimes God removes people not because they're bad, but because they finished their role in your story. You wanted them in chapter 10, but God wrote them out in chapter 5, and every time you try to rewrite what He's already edited, you delay your own destiny. There's no progress in holding on to what no longer carries grace. The anointing flows where the obedience is, and if God said let go, then holding on becomes rebellion dressed in sentiment. Some of you have been stuck emotionally, not because you're weak, but because you're still yoked to someone God already released. Break the soul tie, mourn the loss, but don't worship the memory. You don't need closure from them when you've already received confirmation from Him. The confusion, the distance, the betrayal, even the ghosting, it was all a form of divine direction. Romans 8:28 doesn't say all good things work together. It says all things, including the painful partings, the messy exits, the unanswered questions. God wastes nothing. The silence is speaking, the separation is strategy, and the removal is making room for the relationships that will fuel your assignment, not fight it. So instead of chasing explanations, start preparing for what's next. If they were meant to stay, no force could have removed them. And if they left, then trust the one who holds your story. You don't need to force reconciliation with what God allowed to fall apart. Stop stalking their feed. Stop rewriting the narrative in your head. Stop making excuses for what never honored your anointing. When God removes people, it's not rejection, it's realignment. You are not being punished, you're being positioned. And the faster you surrender, the sooner you'll see why the subtraction was the setup. This is your wake-up call. Release the old, bless what left, and fix your focus forward. The people you lose in obedience are never greater than the presence you gain from walking in alignment.